Good evening, everybody. Good evening, John.
Hi, Bob.
John, how are you doing?
I am doing fine, Bob. I'm doing fine.
You're
Last
way up
time,
in
I think the last time we were together was a couple of years ago in the Glasgow Street venue, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or was it between lockdowns last year? I can't remember whether it was 1 year ago or 2 years ago. It's been a funny couple of years.
Yeah, it's been funny a couple of years. Yes, it's actually 2 years ago, and the last time we met each other was in the Glasgow venue. It was then opened only for a couple of weeks.
Yes, that's right.
Just before the first real lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was actually in Glasgow because we should have had a real big gathering of all European brand ambassadors of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society.
That's right.
Which obviously never happened.
I had to cancel. That's right. That was about year 9 months ago. Yeah, it was nearly 2 years. Nearly 2 years.
It's been a funny time. And it still is. Mr. Murphy is still following us. Dear members, dear viewers, it's only the two of us tonight. Unfortunately, Monique has fallen ill. Not all too bad, as I understand, but still, she's incapable of joining us tonight. And so is Chris. He's got some family circumstances why he's not with us tonight. So that's why I'm sorry you have to do the tasting with us too. Which is not too bad, I hope. It's not too bad being around you, John. That's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's something else that did not really go as planned. And that's actually that I've got this really great tasting pack next beside me, and there's been a lot of logistical problems with the society last year, to say the least, and we sort of experienced it the other way around now. We tried to send John the same package that all of our Benelux members have, but unfortunately, it didn't find the route to Ardentiny.
Ardentiny, yes, Argyll, the wilds of Argyll, the west of Scotland. Normally I live in England, folks. I was sent down there some years ago on missionary work, but I still have a house here in Argyll, and that's where I am this week. And apparently, the package that Bob tried to send me went from Amsterdam to Leipzig in Germany, then to the Midlands of England, and then to Scotland, and it's still not arrived here. So, unfortunately, I do not have your whiskies. So tonight there's going to be a little bit of a difference in that you're going to tell me what the whiskies are like, and I will join them next week or later this week.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point you make, John. Let's invite everybody to give your opinions about the whiskey. Be frank, be honest. What are you experiencing? Let's have a discussion about these whiskeys. There's a lineup. The lineup is actually the other way around than I normally do it. I normally do a lineup from left to right, but this time it's from right to left, and it is a stunning lineup, to be honest.
It is a stunning selection, Bob. This is absolutely amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a tasting with such a collection as this.
Yeah. So I think we're really fortunate, and you shall be as well as soon as your package arrives. But you'll have to take our word for how did these whiskeys taste actually.
Yeah. I must just say, Bob, I'll tell a little story first. When I came to the Netherlands, I hope everybody can understand my Glasgow accent, by the way. But when I first came to the Netherlands a few years ago, I read that the Dutch people are the tallest in the world. Now, I am kind of vertically challenged. I'm short, right? So I was joking with Bob that I might bring a box over to stand on while I was talking to you all, And funnily enough, a few months ago, I was in Queen Street in Edinburgh doing an interview for Austrian TV. And this was going to take place about whiskey, of course, over this table. And this girl who was interviewing me was asked to stare at me, and I was asked to stare at her until the cameraman got all of the angles right. And he was struggling, and he was asking us to move here and move there. And eventually, one of the chaps left the room and came back with a box for me to stand on.
Really?
And
Oh
then,
dear.
and then that made them happy with the angles. And the funny thing is, when I saw the playback, it was a travel log about Edinburgh, and they interviewed me and the SMWS as part of that travel log. And when I saw it on TV, here is me, the tallest I've ever been. Fantastic.
Great.
So I'm glad to be in a tasting with all you tall people. And
Yep.
I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time as well, actually.
Yeah, if all goes to plan, and hope this time it does, you're bound to join us in The Hague, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So really looking forward to that. To do a really big festival. There's been a couple of festivals up until now. I've done Utrecht. I've been to Hulst.
Yeah.
Which was really great. It's good to meet people again, basically. So. I have these whiskeys next to me, and they're sort of calling me, Bob, pour me. So we will start with the oldest whiskey this time, and with a whiskey like this, you're sort of tempted to put it somewhere back in the lineup, especially when a whiskey is this old and this grand, basically. But I haven't done that, and that's for a reason, a very good reason. This is a really nice whiskey, folks. And to be honest, I really appreciate that it's in the lineup. But it's very old, it's very subtle, and it develops while you drink it. So this is a whiskey which deserves a lot of time. During our meetup just before this broadcast, we were talking about Jim McCheyne, and Jim McCheyne once learned me that if you are tasting an older whiskey, you should at least take a minute a year. Well, now there's only one dram in these vials, so a minute a year. Well, it will take some restraint, basically. But I really recommend it to pour this whiskey and try not to drink it up, and try to keep some until the end of this tasting. It will develop and develop and develop. And a really good piece of advice would be to pour only half of your vial into your glass and save the rest for tomorrow and taste it on its own, because this whiskey really deserves to be tasted really with lots of attention, to be basically.
I think that's absolutely right, Bob, and I think it's you're right about that order thing. I mean, a whiskey like this really needs to be tasted first, I think, so we can fully appreciate it. And I think as far as the tasting itself is concerned, I always try to emphasize that you can't be right or wrong about this. It's a very personal thing, you know. And although we have our flavor profiles with kind of typical flavors that you might get in a particular profile, sometimes you'll get something which just means something to you and no one else. And that's to do with your olfactory bulbs being connected, the same part of your brain as your emotions and memories and something. In fact, it's funny, Bob talked about Jim McCheyne there. And I was talking to Jim a couple of years ago, and he said, I can't really get into this. And this is the phrase he used in the conversation, is when people say, oh, it's like tulips on a spring Tuesday in Amsterdam, and he said, that's all nonsense, he said. It's just about trying to identify the flavors and aromas that you're guessing. But then he kind of went on to contradict himself in the same conversation. He said that when he's out in the Far East and he's doing 8 tastings in 5 days, and he gets back to his hotel room and he's exhausted and he's sitting on a balcony of his room and he pours himself a Lars Lafroig because it takes him back to Islay. because that's his memory and his olfactory's work. So I think Jim was perhaps just joshing, kidding on when he said that first piece. And the funny thing was, he didn't say Bowmore. He didn't say Bruichladdich. He said Laphroaig. Maybe Laphroaig's more easily gettable, really, in the Far East. Maybe that was the reason for it. But certainly the whole journey of aroma, and palate, and association is a terrific one.
Yeah, it totally is. And you're absolutely right that there's no such thing as a wrong tasting note.
Right.
Absolutely. There's also not such a thing as a wrong lineup in whiskies. What are you drinking actually?
Well, okay, it's a 26-year-old and it is 38-31. So I'm going to try and not quite as old as yours, but it's the same flavor profile. So let's see if we can enjoy one together.
I think the correct phrase is not too shabby, this one.
Now, we Scots are supposed to be famous for understatement, Bob. That was an understatement, yeah.
Yeah, totally. When I know this, the first thing that occurs to me, it's fruity, it's flowery, it's floral. There's also the first thing you smell, and I find it's really hard to describe sometimes, but you really smell it's an older whiskey. The first thing you smell, this is something that has been in the cask for years and years and years. But it's still quite fresh. It is also delicate. There's several different layers of aromas coming through. Things like roses. I get things like, but also things like some citrusy notes. There's also some marzipan and biscuit and that sort of thing coming through. Really curious what our members think. And if you could leave a comment with us, our social team can put it up on the screen as well, so we can read it, and we can have a little discussion about this dram. What do you think?
And sometimes when you go to the dram in the first instance, and then go for it the second time, you can get the flavors can really develop, can't they, and change. And some people say as well that you should take a little sip of it, chew it in your mouth. But other people say you should actually not restrict yourself to a little sip. You should take quite a reasonable amount in your palate to swirl and swallow to get the full effect. And then what happens is, of course, your retronasal faculty comes into play at the back of your throat and joins your orthonasal to combine those aromas and flavors in your olfactory bulb. So it's fascinating.
Some wood, some citrus, I see.
Yeah.
Honey.
Hi, Max.
Yeah,
how you doing, Max? Good to see you.
Lawrence, Noga. Yeah, true. It's almost there's this undertone of nuttiness, almond almost, like marzipan. I absolutely smell the old Macallan single cask I've had. This is worth every euro. Okay, thank you. Wow. And remember, this is well, I wouldn't say it's very expensive for what you get, but it's not a cheap bottle, this one. Got a bit of waxy feeling as well. Yeah, very good comment. Thank you. There's all kinds of things you experience actually when you're tasting a whiskey. It's the aromas, it's the tastes, but it's also the mouthfeel, which can really contribute to what you're experiencing.
Absolutely.
Honey.
Okay. And Bob's idea, they should keep some back and try it tomorrow or a couple of days is great, because sometimes on a different day, a different time, a different moment, you can get completely different things than you got the first time around. I've actually had SMWS bottles. In fact, last year I opened an SMWS bottle, a 121, that I already drank half of. And I poured another one. I thought, this is the most wonderful whiskey I've had this year. But why didn't I think that when I was drinking the first half of it? And it just caught me in a mood, in a moment, and made all that difference. I think it's fantastic. It's great. What an experience.
Are we drinking this first, or should we be sure to taste the evolution alongside the other 4 drams and get a residence time? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you should leave a little bit in your glass, actually a little bit in your vial for tomorrow, and a little bit in your glass during the rest of this tasting. This dram will develop. I had the opportunity and the privilege to be tasting these whiskies beforehand, and this one really develops in the glass. So give it some time, guys. Give it some time. It's really worth it. Tobacco. Hey, Gemma. Hello. Good evening. Good to see you again. Lots of members. Mathieu. So creamy notes as well. Sultanas. Yeah. So this has been on a refill sherry, but John, the last couple of outturns, we've seen a couple of Distillery 24 bottlings coming through.
It's been fantastic. Yeah. I mean, they've been difficult to get for over time, but we seem to be seeing more and more of them. That's right. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, there's one that's bound to be in The Hague as well. From the top of my head, 24153. Yeah. This is a whiskey that's been sourced from several sherry butts and then put into Oloroso sherry cask. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the ones that our warehouse team bought a couple of years ago in Jerez.
That's a fantastic thing that we could do, Bob. When you think when we started off in 1983, what we were doing was bottling single cask, single malt. But over that 38 years, we've developed and innovated in so many different ways. So now, although we're still doing most of the stuff we do is single cask, single malt, we're doing all of this kind of blended malts, small batch stuff that you've just mentioned, Bob. Lots of different things to create more flavour and give our members so much more to enjoy. It's a fantastic journey we're on. And I think that's one of the important things is that we are taking the new make spirit and we are actually creating the whiskey from that ourselves. We're not usually buying already made whiskey and bottling it. So the thing you've just mentioned, Bob, the process you've just mentioned is us trying to make the most of a special batch of whiskey that we hold, and we've done that very, very well, I think.
Yeah, it's something I always tell people about the society. We're not producers in the sense that we don't distill ourselves. We don't have a distillery. We don't own a set of stills and make new make, but we buy the stuff rather fresh every once in a while and put it in our own wood. So in that sense, we are producers. If you ask people who really know about whiskey, I oftentimes get the remark that about 75-80% of tastes are actually coming from maturation. And in that sense, we are whiskey producers at the society.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a fact. Lots of people say that. You hear it said over and over again, about 70% of the cask. And I think what we're trying to say is that the cask develops the flavours that are already there and also can create some new ones. But Bob and I actually know a scientist who doesn't like anyone using that 70% because he says there's no scientific evidence to say that. It's just a guesstimate in terms of the overall. The wonderful, wonderful thing about whiskey is that science can't yet tell us all the answers, The day they can come along and tell us all the answers that where every single flavour comes from might be the day the romance has gone. But they can't do it now. There is a programme, Bob. I don't know if I've told you this before. It's about 15 years old. It's called The Myth and the Magic. Now, I don't think you can get the whole programme anymore. I think it's gone out of production. I don't think you can get it. But if you go onto the internet and just tap in the myth and the magic, and they put whiskey after it, there's a 13 or 14-minute shortened version of that film. And it's really interesting to watch because it really addresses the fact that we don't really know where all the flavours come from. I think the final scene is Nick Morgan, ex of Diageo, and is now a whiskey book author. He's wrote 2 books recently. And he said, if you get a distiller up against the wall with a gun to his head, he said, tell me where all those flavours come from. You'd have to say, I don't know.
There's stuff we know, there's stuff we don't know. And in between is the magic that is called whiskey. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. I would like to propose to pour the other dram, the next dram. So this one is actually from Distillery 115. And to be honest, this is one of the most underrated distilleries I know in Scotland. Nearly always when I get a dram of this one, this distillery poured, it is nearly always really, really, really good. And then I forget to buy it. I do forget. It's so this one is 28 years old. It's in our old and dignified flavor profile, which is a sort of vetting of all that is good and old and dignified. You can find all sorts in that category. To be honest, there's peated whiskey in there.
Well, some of you may know one of our colleagues called Mads. Mads does some of these YouTube things once upon a time, and she said, "Well, I think when I think of old and dignified, I kind of half think of John. He's old. He's not that dignified."
Oh dear.
Nah, she says she didn't say it. I could have made the joke if she did say it.
Yeah, well, I always pretend that I'm still fresh and fruity and stuff, but
yeah, I'm way past that stage.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. So this one is totally different from the other one, from the first one. Grapefruit, yeah, leapfrog. That is a really good note on this one. It is fruity, but the fruitiness is more in the backdrop of this nose. First thing I get is things like green grasses. Okay, I was more in the woody spectrum, to be honest. It's a bit dusty for me in a good way. It smells of vanilla, but it's not in your face. It's in the backdrop. Cocos, yeah, absolutely. You can absolutely coconut. It's absolutely there. Apricot, yeah, I get that too. And on good and descriptive tasting notes. This one is one for the books. Pour it into a glass.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah. Shimmering beauty of the shimmering beauty of butterfly wings. That is what this whiskey is called. And the tasting notes go like this. Pour it into your glass and let the magic unfold like seeing a butterfly opening its wings. Wow.
It's a beautiful description. Beautiful description, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So 28 years old. What were you doing 28 years ago?
I know, fantastic. On the 9th of June, 92, I always like to just point out the distillery date because sometimes it can mean something to someone very personally, birthday or something like that. I was in Japan a couple of years ago, Bob, and I was doing a tasting. And out the corner of my eye, I saw this chap over there getting very animated and nudging his friend and pointing to his notebook. So I went over and asked him, why was he getting so excited? And he said he visits Scotland all the time and goes around distilleries and takes notes. And he was in the distillery of this bottling on the day that what he was drinking was distilled. And the whole place went into applause. And he tried to buy a case, but we never had a case to give him, you know. But sometimes the actual date of distillation can mean something very special.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, in 1992, I was starting to study here in Nijmegen, the place where I still live. Can you imagine?
My goodness, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Citrus, fruits, vanilla, roses. I saw incense coming through as a tasting note as well, which I really get.
What I think is interesting about this, Bob, is that many of the tasting notes that we've seen so far coming through, you might not automatically associate with old and dignified, which kind of just demonstrates the fact that although we try to point to flavours that you might get, you can completely get different things. There's a lot of citrus and fruit coming through in the notes.
Yeah. And from what I understand is that within the panel, there's always a lot of discussion about in which flavor profile a whiskey should be put.
Oh yes,
and I've seen it a couple of times as well. We did a couple of blind tastings with members here online, and also live last couple of years. And especially when it comes to in which flavor profile should this whiskey be put, most of the time people get into real nice discussions about that.
Oh, yeah,
except for when it's a peaty whiskey.
Yes,
and,
yes.
A couple. One of the online tastings we did last year during COVID. There was this Distillery 134 bottling in there, and it was in the sweet and spicy and sweet flavor profile. Actually, that's what is apparently what the tasting panel thought it would be, and during this tasting, so this was with 30 people, and they all agreed upon that it was a peated whiskey.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great.
So within the flavor profile, there can be so much.
Oh yes.
Divergence.
Yes. Absolutely. I think everybody should print off the flavor profile lists from our website to use as a point of reference. But I always say, do what you're doing now first. See what you get, and then look at the tasting note. Don't do it the other way around, or all you'll find yourself doing is trying to identify the things you've just read about. You know, I was on a tasting panel a couple of years ago, and Ewan, our spirits manager, was the chair that day. And I said to him, "Oh, Ewan, this is I'm getting leather in an old car." And Ewan said, "Very good, John. What is the model of the car?" But the thing is, it wasn't as daft as it sounds, because what he had established in his head is that I think he's got a memory working there. And if I can drag it out of him, it makes more of an interesting tasting note than just leather of an old car. And it so transpires my brother-in-law has a 1953 Rolls Royce. And that's what I was thinking of. So it just shows, doesn't it? Sometimes you can recognize aromas and flavors from your own experience. Incredible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Klopper. Oh dear, how do I translate that? A whopping whiskey. That's what Rob Vergouw says. And I do agree. It's actually far more potent than I would have expected from its age. Sometimes whiskeys, when they get older, they get really smooth and delicate, like the 24 actually is. But this one has kept its strength, its potency. It's a bit peppery. It's complex. But it's really good. It's really good, this one. If you like to prepare for the next one, to give it some time to breathe, then please do so with the 70 point. Okay. Good suggestion, that is. I was just picking up my glass of 24 again, and from what I'm smelling now, it's almost hearty. It's almost like it's the first. If if you start frying meat, if you put real butter in the pan, and you get this almost burned butter smell, and right after you put your steaks into the hot pan, that's what I'm smelling now. It's really great in this whiskey. Wow. Okay. Great stuff.
By the way, just talking about the tasting panel, Bob. It's a fact that a human being has a million sensory, sensors. And a sheepdog has about 200 million. So next year we're going to get a couple of sheepdogs on the panel.
The kind that really like whiskey, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's rather sharp for me at first blush, but with a trickle of water, it makes it much nicer. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, man. I usually add some water every once in a while, but I didn't tell you. But with this tasting, I would like to leave it up to you if you do or don't. So these are great whiskeys on their own, and there's only 1 dram in these files. So be careful with adding in water, because you can easily put it in, you can never get it out again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even better than the previous one. Better. It's different. It's totally different from the 24, which it should be. But burn noisette. Thank you very much, Leapfrog. That's what I. Pakje Chroma. Yeah. Oh dear. This doesn't translate all too well. It's a brand of frying butter here in the Netherlands.
Okay. Well, in Scotland, we often say that we're getting the aroma of iron brew, which is a soft drink in Scotland, which I don't think is maybe so well known anywhere else. But so this is the thing about the tasting notes. If we're on a tasting panel one day and it's all Scotsmen that day, there's other nationalities involved in the group, but if it's all Scotsmen and we think it's fruity, we're going to be thinking of Scottish fruits. Remember, there's 2,000 fruits in the world. So people all around the world might think it's fruity, but have a completely different idea of what kind of fruit they're thinking of,
What I really like about the SWS bottles is that although it's high ABV, it never is unbalanced and strong tasting. Unbalanced? No, I think we usually strike a balance actually with the bottlings, but for my palate, they're usually quite high in the taste category. It's really. I haven't had any bland SMWS bottlings, never. And I've tried some. Have you ever had a bottle of which you thought, it's nice, but it's not?
No. Sometimes that was a good comment. That Prince Rupert's dog. I think that, remember, that's why sometimes we're bottling at kind of strange ages, because we're deciding. We're not working to 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, 18 years old. We will bottle when we think the balance has been struck. So, I mean, it's sometimes, remember that if you're looking at a distillery who bottles 10 and 12-year-old or whatever, they're using different years of whiskey to try and get that consistency of taste that they're looking for, to try and achieve that balance. If we're using single cask, then we're testing it all the time to try and make sure we get the balance right. I've done a few of the blended malts that we've done, Bob, and I think some of them have been amazing. And we've done those at 50%. But again, that's very carefully managed and married so that we get that balance. I sometimes think you get a 59% ABV SMWS whiskey and you think, oh my goodness, that's fantastic. I don't need any water in that. And then you have a 52% one. And you think, oh, I think that maybe could do with a couple of drops of water. So I don't think there is a rule to that. over a certain percentage, you should maybe think about water, and underneath you should, or you shouldn't, I think it's very much down to the individual whiskey and the member themselves in terms of what fits their palate.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also got to remember that it's not so much the alcohol that makes a whiskey sharp. It's the other components of the whiskey that can give you a really peppery feel, and it will usually soften up a bit with water. But I've had really strong whiskeys in the sense that they're really high ABV, but they can really be really smooth.
That's right.
And I've had 42, 41% whiskeys, which can be really peppery and even harsh to the palate. So,
well, Bob, as you alluded to there, remember this: if we've given you a whiskey at 60% ABV, it means it's 60% ethanol and 40% water. Neither of which smell or taste of anything particularly.
True.
During the processes of fermentation, distillation, and maturation, flavour congeners are created, and that's what you're experiencing now. But those flavour congeners only make up between 0.2 and 0.4% of the total volume. Quite incredible,
Yeah, so that is incredible. And that's always good. That's also going to show that us as humans are, well, we're not as good. Our noses are not as good as those of sheepdogs, but they're pretty decent.
but when you think about that figure, 0.2, 0.4, anyone who thinks they don't have a good nose should think again. That's all you're getting to smell.
True. Yeah, true. And that also reminds me of last year when we had some educational sessions with the SMWS, our whiskey ambassadors. Well, we obviously didn't have any tastings to perform, so we basically what the society did was they decided to educate us, which was fun and good. But I also there's one thing I remembered from one of these sessions was that there's still congeners, there's still smells, aromas in whiskey which cannot be picked up by automation, by technical stuff, and can be picked up by our noses, in very, very low concentrations. So if you think your nose is bad, think again. It's really good.
Well, just think, Bob, in whiskey there's approximately roughly about 300 to 400 congeners. Flavour congeners in vodka, there's 2.
Yeah, true. There's 115 is really great, but I'm not into that distillery. Max commented. No, I'm not either. And every time and time again, when I taste this stuff from this particular distillery, I'm always pleasantly surprised. So I think I have to think again.
I'll tell you something, Max. Let me know what you think about this. We haven't had many from this distillery, as you can tell. It's only 22. And there's a bit, if you read about that, I've never been to this distillery. And if you read about it, some people say they use worm tubs. And if you look at the list that's usually given about distilleries with worm tubs, it's not on there. So I'm actually not sure about it myself. I don't know if you know, Max. But do you know, Bob?
No, not sure.
No. But obviously, if there's worm tubs in that distillery, then it means that all of those flavours that are coming through, it just shows you how long it's been matured, because the flavours that the people on the tasting are talking about are light, fruity, citrusy type flavours, which is quite amazing. So there's none of that kind of heavy flavouring that you might get if it was worm tubs. But it has been in the cask for 28 years, right enough. So
true. And a refill bourbon cask as well, which is quite common in all the whiskies. You will nearly never find a fresh bourbon. A whiskey matured for 28 years on a new ex-bourbon cask.
No,
the wood will have taken over by then. And
sure.
Yeah. The 24 lost its freshness. Yeah, I agree with you, Gunther. it's not as fresh anymore, but it's got this nice layer of leathery, woody, honey kind of flavors coming through. It's really nice. But it shows you, it develops. You should give this one, time to develop as well, to really enjoy it. Yeah. Time to move on to one of the most scenic distilleries in Scotland, I think, when photographed from the right angle. But if you arrive at this distillery and you don't go through the gate, but you go to the right and up on the hills, and you walk into the fields over there towards the distillery, you can have a really great opportunity to photograph this distillery slightly from up above, and that's a really great sight. So
it's featured in quite a famous film as well, Bob.
True, absolutely. With a certain Mr. Rory McLeod, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
The film we're talking about, folks, is The Angel's Share. So if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. It's a kind of comedy drama, but if you think my Glasgow accent is strong, what do you hear them in this film? Switch on subtitles. The the famous Charlie McCheyne, is in the film as well, playing himself, but as Rory McAllister.
Oh, Rory McAllister, that was his name. Yes. Yeah. So, Distillery 70, cask number 43, 27 years old, second fill, ex-bourbon barrel at 54.1%. And the first thing I get now is sweetness, fruitiness. It's almost, it is definitely tropical. Aromas like mango are coming through. Pineapple. Also some deeper fruits, things like perhaps dried fruit, plum, cherries, perhaps. A lot of sweetness on the nose. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. What are you having, John?
I'm having this 55-67. It's only 14-year-old. I'm not as lucky as you guys out there. So it's a ex-bourbon hogshead transferred to a first fill ex-Oloroso hogshead.
Very fruity, melon, mango, lime, coconut. Yeah, absolutely. Fruity bubblegum came. Gemma was commenting fruity bubblegum, I guess. Seeds compass, grapeskins. Okay. White wine. Okay. White wine and bubblegum. What a combination, huh? Tropical fruit, strawberry. Okay, good. Turkish fruit in the aftertaste. I haven't had it in my mouth yet, so let's try it out.
Lots of very, very good comments, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Wow. It is rather sharp on the palate as well. It's I see zesty, and that sort of inclines me to think that it's zesty in the mouth as well. But it's peppery. Although it's only a couple. That goes to show it's only a couple of percent ABV more than the last one, but this one is really, really peppery. I taste the ABV on this one. Feels 15% higher. Yeah, that's what I mean. That is absolutely what I mean. It feels far stronger than it actually is. I bet this one can take a few drops of water. Yeah, perhaps. Absolutely. Come and meet us in The Hague and Bray. Yeah, absolutely. There's two festivals going on actually that weekend. So the festival in The Hague is 19th, 20th, 21st of November. And the 21st of November, we're also in the Bray in Belgium, at a rather small festival, but still. and our colleague Chris will be there with a stand with all kinds of goodness. Basically, he's got, he should have the same sort of whiskies that we have in The Hague. So, if you're in Belgium and not wanting to travel all the way to The Hague, or if you don't have tickets, and to be honest, as far as I know, it's sold out. But we're also in Bray, so come and meet us.
Yeah, so if you all want to come along at The Hague, I'll be there, and I'll bring a box with me. Stand on.
Yeah. Oh dear. You actually, I think you've to reach my height, you should bring quite a large box. But
yeah. So like 2 boxes for you, Bob.
Yeah. 2 crates. Yeah. Again, some peppery notes in the finish. Yeah, I agree. It's also kind of dry. It's a bit dusty dry in the finish for me. Gonna try some water. Okay. That gives me the opportunity not to try. Thank you, Gunther. Please fill us in on what you're experiencing. Granny Smith, pineapple, Granny Smith. Apples. Okay. Pineapple, melon, lime. Good. And we're also going to do a tasting at the Malt Vault in Utrecht on the 18th. And I'm really, really looking forward to that one. The Malt Vault, for those of you who haven't been there, it's a whiskey cafe, a whiskey pub next to the Dutch, the Utrecht canals. And it's a bit of a acquired find. As in, if you don't know where it is, you're bound to be searching for it. It is, it's in the nooks and crannies of the Utrecht canals. But if you have found it, it's really, really great place to be. It's like this cellar, and the owner of it, Seed, has really done it up really, really well. It's absolutely stunning place. Will the box have whiskey in it, John?
It might be. I see. I tell you what, it will definitely be a box which had whiskey in it at one point.
So it won't be a cardboard box, huh?
Yeah, very, very high heels. I'll need to get someone to take a photograph, Whiskey 101, and be walking through customs with this box with a special clearance paper.
That would be fine. Yeah, well, let's not get into customs and excise and that sort of thing tonight. We've had our fair share of that last couple of months. So.
Yeah.
70 has got his lovely warm long finish. Yeah, with a drop of water. Okay. You convinced me. I have to try water with this one. I will. So, John, have you been doing many tastings in the UK the last couple of months?
It's come back to life the last several weeks. I did a tasting in Winchester, which is quite near here. Quite near the place in England where I live. And then I did went to the Liverpool Festival, which was it was a whiskey lounge festival. So I did that on the following day. Actually, I drove up very early in the morning. And I did one in the vaults for our own marketing team after a meeting that they'd had. And I've got a few more coming up. But obviously the big thing I'm looking forward to at the moment is coming over to see you guys, and then I'm moving on to Austria and Germany. So
yeah,
that'll be a bit, yeah.
Yeah, great stuff.
But just before I come over, though, I've got a tasting in London on the 16th. So looking for a good friend who's a member and a smaller bunch. So that'll be good fun. Yeah,
that's the sort of thing we do on a regular basis as well. Bespoke tastings for people, and if you want to know more about that, you can always. My details are all around the internet, all over the internet. So contact us and
sure.
Feel free to ask. Okay. Basically,
great stuff, Bob. We've also got Jamie Oliver coming in with a few of his colleagues week after next as well. So we'll do a little bit for them as well. He often comes in. He's a great member.
Okay. So he's going to the London venue or the Vault?
Yeah.
London venue. Okay. Yeah, I really miss being at the venues, to be honest.
I know.
There's a couple of things I miss about Scotland, and the venues are definitely up there.
But I forgot that we had one. The Glasgow venue had a gathering, Bob, out at a brewery, the other side of the city. And we had 90 to 100 people in there. It was a Saturday evening a few weeks ago. It was a wonderful event. Yeah, really fantastic, you know.
Water really takes in a great direction. Suddenly it feels more older to me, yeah. And the fruit goes more dessert-like. Cooked fruit, brown sugar. I agree. It gets more fruity.
That's a great description, yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff. Oh, water makes the spice drop a bit and the fruity shines now. Yeah, the fruit shines now. Absolutely. I agree. Wow. So, and have you been visiting many distilleries lately? I don't think so.
I was actually in Oban Distillery yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I said to someone today, it must be the 127th time I've done Oban, you know. It's always a wonderful little tour and a very, very great story because it's a very small distillery and they can't expand because the town effectively built up around the distillery. But at the back, they're against a cliff and they tried to excavate the cliff a few years ago to try and expand it. And they found a cave with 4 skeletons in it. So it was all analysed from the Mesolithic era. So they decided, well, we better not do any more excavation in this. And the 4 skeletons are now in the National Museum or something, you know.
Okay.
So it's always a little story. Georgie Crawford, who used to work for us, Bob, but was the manager at Lagavulin for a while and has now moved on, says that every distillery has 1,000 little quirks, 1,000 little stories, and they're always great to find out as you go around, you know. And the fact that they cannot, no matter how hard they've tried over the years, to replicate one distillery spirit in another location, even though they do everything exactly the same.
Yeah,
it's part of that thing that science cannot explain.
There's many of those stories around.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, you one of these stories is connected to a whiskey you had earlier on, Distillery 38. But
that's right. Yeah. That's right. That's exactly a good story in that case. Yeah.
Do any of you keep a log with your notes? I would be interested to know if you do. To be honest, I usually don't anymore. When I started off discovering whiskey, and this is as you can see from the hair, it's years ago. I did keep notes. I did keep notes about every whiskey I tasted, and I was really elaborate sometimes about what I was tasting. Even at festivals, you would see me walking around with a little booklet and making notes and stuff. Up until the point where I had gone through a couple of books, skeletons of the original Access. Yeah, probably. When I had a couple of these books, and I discovered that I wasn't reading back on them, so I thought to myself, "What's the point? I have to remember 3 sort of whiskeys. The ones I really, really like. Those I have to remember because those are the ones that I usually want to try and buy. The ones that I really, really dislike, because those are the ones that I want to avoid. And the ones that my wife really, really likes, because those are the ones I want to have in my whiskey cupboard, but in a special shelf. So she knows where to find them.
If anyone is interested in how to begin a whiskey log, there's actually an article on our site on exactly that subject from a couple of months ago, which you can look at. And there are some members who've shared their methods of keeping a log. So you might be able to see something that attracts you there in terms of recording your journey.
Yeah, and on top of that, when I started off discovering whiskey, the internet was there, but it wasn't really as active as it is now, and or as big as it is now. There were no such things as smartphones. We ran around whiskey festivals with digital cameras. Ah, well, that's been a while.
Pascal was asking me when we bottle 110. Good question, Pascal. I think that there are some distilleries which is very, very difficult to get a hold of anymore, you know. And 110 is a small distillery. I don't know if I mentioned the name before. I probably did, yeah. A very small distillery, and the amount they can make is really they can only use it themselves. They don't have enough like some of the big distilleries around to throw around. So we haven't had 110 for a while. I think there's a couple of other distilleries fall into that kind of category as well. 14.
Yeah. Some of the stuff is really hard to get by. And to be honest, if you look at Distillery 110 and think of our colleagues in the independent bottling scene, there's not too many bottlings of that distillery around from no one, to be honest. No. It is sold by the owners in large amounts, and they do a great job at that, and it's really great stuff to be tasting every once in a while.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So
we keep on trying to talk to them and keep on. You know what they all say? They all say if we were going to give someone else our casks, it would be you, because you don't use our name. But we haven't got enough for ourselves. Never mind to sell them off. That's usually the answer.
Yeah, that's what I understood as well. And well, it's fair to them. It's their product, so
yeah.
I was gradually moving on to the next whiskey, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Which is of a rather small distillery as well, 42. Cask number 64. I actually have in The Hague, there will be another 42 on the stand as well, which falls in a totally different category than this one does.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's a peated one.
Yeah, sure.
Pleasure Garden. Well. Wow. The first thing I have on this one is butterscotch, fudge, fudgy flavors, and it's also, it reminds me of Sinterklaas. Now this doesn't translate all too well as well, I'm afraid, John, but it's here in the Lowlands, we celebrate a party around the 5th of December, and it's called Sinterklaas. And Sinterklaas is it's somewhat reminiscent of the same sort of party you celebrate at Christmas with Santa Claus. So the names are a bit convergent. So, but if you're younger, if you're a child, you get these sweets.
Okay.
It really it took me back to sitting in a living room, getting a handful of sweets and stuff.
Sure, that's great.
On a fat bone, 100% pleasure for the nose.
That's the memories and emotions thing coming into play, Bob. See?
Yeah,
that's great.
Bakery cake. Okay. That's fruit yogurt. Okay. I get the yogurt. The fruit I don't have, but the freshness that hits you when you smell. It's fresh, and at the same time it's really fudgy, which is a strange combination. You would expect all these somewhat heavier aromas, but it's also fresh. Fudge, I agree. Okay. Tobacco leaves first on the nose for me. Tobacco leaves first on the nose for me. Okay. That's a good comment as well, Sietse. Boterkoek. Yep. Absolutely. I agree. So this is butter cookies. Yeah, that is
No,
not
no,
doesn't
Arno,
translate.
I like the surname there, Arno.
Boterkoek. Yeah.
No, the surname, Bob.
McLean. Yeah. So what are you having as a fourth dram?
I've got this 7266. Only 10 years old. So first fill bourbon barrel. 26th of September 2007. So I had it for quite a while. Very nice, very light.
Yours says, "Wow, my first reaction was slightly peated." Okay, could be. This distillery does actually make peated whiskies, and
yeah.
Well, I don't know if you realize that, but most distilleries, when they switch from from peated whiskies to non-peated whiskies, and then back to peated whiskies, they don't really clean out their manufacturing kit. They basically they distill it. They distill the peatedness out of it. So what you will see in those distillates is that they you see the peatedness gradually going down, batch after batch. There could be peatedness in there. On the taste, Chris is not here, but Chris would have said schizophrenic. It tastes totally different from what it smells like. Fudge, tum, yeah, absolutely. But on the taste, it's more fresh, herby. So it's more like green herbs, not so much spiciness, but green herbs coming through. And it's peppermints, yeah. And it's totally different from the aromas. So here's to our colleague Chris with his schizophrenic whiskey. That's something I learned from him.
What is that, Bob, that Max is talking about?
Haags hopje. That is a sweet that is indigenous to The Hague. So
okay.
I shall endeavor to have some Haagse hopjes on the stand.
Okay.
So you can have a taste. Surprising savory nose. Yeah, I agree. It's sugar candies that come with paper note. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of as well. So paper note are 1 centimeter big cookies, basically, which the Sinterklaas assistants throws around into the crowd. Sanjeev, a sort of fudgy tzatziki, even. Wow. So that's coming back to the yogurt again that some people are smelling. First nose, I also thought slightly peated, maybe heavy barrel char. Okay, could be. Disappeared immediately. I love all these enthusiastic comments that people are making. Great stuff.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, it's really good to see that coming through. You know, people are happy to make the comments. Some gatherings, tastings in other countries, usually in the Far East, people are not so keen to actually say what they are thinking, you know. So it's good to see that you're all quite happy to throw in your feelings.
So this is one of the distilleries in Scotland which I haven't been to. It's quite remote.
Absolutely. No, I've been there. It's wonderfully remote, actually. Yeah, it's a very, very lovely situation. You know, in a small town on the island, they are very, very romantic and.
If you see the picture of the town, actually, it never reminds me of Scotland. It reminds me of tropical islands.
Yeah, I know.
With all the colours going on.
That's right. There's actually a children's program here, based on that scene.
Balamory, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Are they not allowed to tell the name of the distillery? Well, it's not exactly not allowed to tell them. Of course, we could tell you the name of this distillery. But there's two things with the distillery names on not being on our bottles. The first thing is that, to be honest, how important is it where it comes from compared to what is actually in the bottle? As long as it's good stuff, I don't really care where it's coming from. And on top of that, well, as soon as you start putting names of distilleries on bottles, there's all kinds of rules you have to keep to, and numbers are easier, basically.
Originally, Alex, it was just about the actual purpose is if you have the name on a bottle and you know that distillery, then you might be tempted to think the flavours are going to be the same as that same distillery bottling you had last week, and it won't because it's single cask. So it really started off as a methodology by which you just the flavours first, and concentrate the flavours from that single cask, and then you can compare it once you get to know, because everybody knows you can find those distillery names out. It's just a little kind of part of our DNA that we try to approach the flavour first rather than what that distillery normally does. Okay.
Yeah, that's very well put. Thank you. And I really mean it, by the way, that if the stuff within the bottle is good, I don't really care where it's from. I really don't care.
I'm slightly different from that. I get, I think, Bob, Scotch whisky for me is to do with history, place, and culture, and the land around the distillery and its place in that community. So I always like to know which distillery it is for that reason. But understand the first point is that, concentrate the flavour first and then worry about, because often what's happened, we did a survey of members several years ago, Bob, and over 60% of members, when we bottled a whiskey from a distillery for the first time, they went out and bought a bottle of that distillery's own stuff to compare it.
Yeah.
So we were actually a force for good in the industry as a whole because of that, So it's a bit of an odd one, that really. There was a question there earlier about the Far East. Could you put that up again? Someone was asking me about tasting in the Far East.
Burn downs. Yeah. Good question.
Yes. It's because of that idea, Bjorn, that, if you grow up in Japan, you grow up with a different nose, feel, experience of your country and what it gives you, your land. So yes, people will often, and what we've tried to do more often now, more recently, is that we've tried to get our foreign branches to write their own tasting note in their own language. So it can still be sweet, fruity, and mellow, but it might be sweet, fruity, and mellow as they understand it. For example, we have done tasting notes in the past with things like Arbroath Smokies or Tunnock's Caramel Wavers, or so how are people abroad, unless they know Scotland and have got some experience in Scotland, expected to understand what that's all about? So we're trying to move gradually forward to a situation where we can try and do a bit of that translation from the people, the members themselves in those countries.
Yeah. We actually did do that through 3 times now. Last year, around this time, we made tasting notes for the 2 Benelux exclusive bottlings we brought out last month and the month before. And both of these have got Dutch tasting notes on them, which differ from English tasting notes in the sense that you will find references on it to Dutch and Belgian sweets, for instance.
Yeah.
And these sweets are not known in the UK.
Yeah.
Famous other example I always mention when someone asks questions like these is Christmas cake. If you look at tasting notes, especially on whiskeys, sherry matured whiskeys from the UK, they often mention Christmas cake. And if you've never had a real British Christmas cake, how on earth are you going to have any references to what that smells like? You don't.
Sure,
You don't. You really don't. If you the first time I really tasted one, a really good old British Christmas cake, that was the time when I thought back at all the whiskies I've had with the tasting note on, and that one then it really clicked to me. Well, that's what they're talking about. So you don't have the reference.
Yeah, I see Bjorn's mentioning Iron Brew. Yeah, I don't know if you know Iron Brew, Bjorn, but I'll tell you this. You know that Scotland is the only country in the world where Coke is sold, and it's not the top-selling soft drink. Iron Brew is. There you go.
Absolutely. Well, let's not go into too deep in my personal opinion about Iron Brew, but I think I think it tastes like liquid chewing gum, Bubblicious, that sort of stuff. And I cannot return from Scotland without bringing some for my both two children, because they will literally kick me out of the house if I don't.
It's a Scottish hangover cure, as you know, Bob.
There's enough sugar in there for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know when they try to take the sugar away and do a healthy Iron Brew, there was a petition signed by about 250,000 people saying, "No, leave it alone."
Give us back our sugar. Oh dear. After looking up Distillery 42, I've tasted different independent bottlers from this distillery the last couple of years. All taste very different. Every time I said, "Wow, I like this." Yeah, I agree.
Well said, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely, and also their own bottlings. I really like them. I really do.
Yeah,
great comment. Okay, there was also a comment about the 24. I'm going back to that one, and even after these three other drams, smelling the 24 again, it was very subtle. It still is very subtle, but it's giving away all these kind of deeper notes that are in there now. And also some fruitiness has returned. I think I previously mentioned leather and stuff, and the leathery scent is still there, but underneath there is some things like perhaps raspberry jam or something like that. Really nice. Fig bread. Wow. Yeah, that's a great comment. Okay. Wow, great stuff. Upcoming event. Yeah, absolutely. The 12th of December, we're bound to go to the Engelenburg again. The Engelenburg, John, is a castle here in the Netherlands. And in the castle, there's a hotel and a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And we've done food pairings with them a couple of times now. So they don't have a Michelin star, but they are really up there. It's really good what they produce, and it's so much fun being with their chef and trying out these food and whiskey combinations that we can make. It is really great. Food pairing and whiskey. When I turned SMW ambassador, I didn't think much of doing food pairings. To be honest, it wasn't really my thing, but. Having done a couple of them the past 2 years, it can be really great.
When I think back to my father's generation, Bob, and how they drank whiskey and beer, the idea of pairing it with food, don't be ridiculous, you know. And but there is a culture of connoisseurship now, particularly in the younger generations, and they want to experience all these different flavors together. So it's wonderful. What was that Whiskey 101 said there?
Yeah, I actually made a photograph of that. He had a really great idea for a tasting.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. Special box for you members. Yeah.
Thank you for the idea. That is a really great idea for tasting. Yeah. Wow. So, well, perhaps more people agree. Don't forget the haggis. It's always hard chasing the haggis around the bends of Scotland. You've got the right turning haggis and the left turning haggis, and
Beyond, no, we haven't been the first to use STR casks. We're amongst the first. It was Dr. Jim Swan who really kind of developed that whole idea of the STR treatment in order to get the whole different set of flavors and to get more out of a cask which had been used before. And when I was in the distillery yesterday, they were pointing to STR casks. Always red wine. No, not always red wine. No, not always red wine.
No,
It's a treatment that can really be applied to any type of cask which we think you want to add something to it. I think there is a comment that's normally said in the industry that no matter what you do to a cask that's been used, you can never get back to the first fill effect, but you can try and get more of what you might have got from a refill or something,
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, STR means shave toast recharge. So what they actually do is they shave out the inside of the casks. They retoast it, so they heat up the inside of the cask, and wood being basically a pair of complicated sugars and glue. The sugars will actually caramelize, and then they recharge. So they put the wood on fire to open up the wood and to burn off some of those caramelized sugars. And that's the process in which which is described with STR.
And I think one of the other things that we've been asked in recent years, Bjorn, is that we've did quite a lot of extra maturation casks in recent years. And people say, why did you start that all of a sudden? Why are you doing? Well, it's not started all of a sudden. The first extra maturation cask that we did was 1991. We've actually just accelerated the process in recent years for the same reason we do everything else. They just try and create a huge diversity of flavour.
110 on STR, yeah, that would be great, Gunther.
That would be great, Gunther. Yes, absolutely, yeah.
If Ewan had such a cask, I think I wouldn't know about it. Let's go to the last whiskey in the lineup already. It's
Sandy's hurrying us up there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that stuff is great. So this is Distillery 3. It's the youngest one in the lineup, and if you do a tasting with me, you will find me oftentimes doing the younger ones last because they tend to be more potent. And with this one, it's not different. Distillery 3 peated, 16 years old, second fill bourbon barrel, 55.2% alcohol. And you were reaching out for another bottle there, John. What are you pouring yourself?
It's a 53, Bob.
Okay.
53, 353, Parton's in his creel. It's 9 years old, peated from Islay.
Yep. And so is this one. It's from Islay. Yeah. You just recently been there, John?
Yes, last week. Fantastic. I went to Bruichladdich, Kilhoman, Lafroig, of course. Bob probably knows the story, folks, so I'll maybe get a chance to tell you the festival. I've got a long history with Lafroig and quite a heartfelt story about why it's my favourite distillery. And we did Ardnahoe as well. And the rest of the group, not me, went to Ardbeg and also up to Bunnahabhain. So yeah, good week. That's what the Islay Whisky Academy is. You in the morning you're getting a lecture or some aspect of whiskey making. In the afternoon you go to a distillery to look at specifically that aspect in action.
Yeah,
so it's very good. And if you qualify at the end of the week, if you pass the exam, you get a watch.
Probably not that watch. No,
I'm not more kidding. That's a present from our Denmark branch to me.
Yeah, that's great. I've seen you wearing it oftentimes. It's great. It's a great watch to look at.
Yeah.
It's very clean, campfire wood smoke type of peat. Okay. Behind the peat, I smell herbs. Yeah, I do agree. It's this layer of peatiness, and it's quite fresh as well. And there's absolutely herbiness and fruitiness behind there. Peppery, yeah.
Hi, Marianne.
A good decision to pour this last. Yeah, if we would have started with this one, that would not have been the perfect choice, to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't have liked to done 24 after this one, Bob.
Nah. Pascal Foot I could order this bottle 3, but unfortunately told you. Oh yeah, Pascal, I know. Sorry about that. Yeah, that sort of thing sometimes happen. Ooh, awesome. Yeah, it is. Having said that, though, the last 2 tastings I did, one was in Katwijk, and the other one, great stuff, was in Horen with Max. I poured one of the Benelux exclusive after the tasting as a sort of dessert tasting. I oftentimes can't contain myself and take some dessert with me. And it was actually Distillery 26. So after having had 6 other whiskies, and the last one being quite a heavily peated one, this Distillery 26 still came out over the top of the other ones. So yeah, not having peaty one in the beginning of in the start of the lineup, I usually don't, and I sort of get it, but well. And as a rule of thumb, I will do it. But you can absolutely cat pee in the back. Yeah, black currant cat pee, that sort of thing sometimes happens with Bummore. Distillery 3. I did it again. Why am I always doing that?
Bob, don't worry. We all do it.
Oh, my dear. Chris will love his the aftertaste, salty licorice and sweet touch. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it has some black currant in the back. Absolutely. Wow, nice. Vegetative on the nose for me, like you're burning the head of lettuce. Okay.
Good description.
Cool. Yeah. Having a bit
Gemma,
of
you're not related to Jan, are you?
No, she isn't. I asked her before.
All right, okay.
So there's this tall Dutchman working at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society too, Jan Dame. Jan, if you're watching, Slange.
Yeah, cheers, Jan. See you next week or the following week after. On Monday, maybe.
And Jan has been living in Scotland for many years now. I actually converse in English with Jan, so he's
really?
sort of
really.
Yeah. He's sort of out of touch with Dutch. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ellie Knijber, a very nice peppery peaty dram with a warm, smooth finish. Yeah, I agree. This warms you up. It does. Can you imagine this? It's always been said, but with this kind of dram, but can you imagine yourself sitting down at a log fire in winter on Islay with horizontal rain going past the window? Wow.
Absolutely.
Pinewood.
Well, it's the famous Scottish comedian says, Bob, there's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing.
It's very true, especially in Scotland. Then again,
absolutely.
Then again, if you go to Scotland, you have to be prepared.
Well, that's right. The other thing Billy Connolly said is that in Scotland we only get 2 seasons: winter and June.
Winter and June. Yeah, I do agree. Couple of years ago, we went actually from Islay, where we collected our own cask with this one. We bought a cask of Bruichladdich years and years ago, 2001, just after it reopened. And we actually collected a couple of bottles when it was bottled in 2012. And after that, we went to Speyside because it was Speyside Festival. Well, and there's one. The Speyside Festival is one of these times in Scotland when if you like to visit distilleries, if you like to visit tastings, that sort of stuff, Speyside Festival is one of the places to be. To be honest, and we drove into Speyside through the little road, It's quite a big road, which runs next to Ballindelloch Distillery.
Yeah,
and when we drove past Ballindelloch Distillery, I remember looking at the thermometer in the car, and it was really nice and sunny, and it was almost a very warm spring evening. It was 20 degrees centigrade out there. Great stuff. So we actually ended up in Duffton and went to the pub and had a beer in front of the pub because it was that nice weather. Next morning, when I woke up, I looked out of the window and there was this much snow on my car. That's Scotland.
Absolutely.
That's Scotland. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Added a little drop of water, and the sweetness is far more prominent now. Okay. So here goes the water. Loving this one. Good to see you, Bart. Bart's been on a couple of tasting of us as well. Some hints of meatiness and grapefruit at the end. Yeah. Great comments. So if you want to join us with our events the next coming months, because there are, obviously we can do live events again, luckily. And I hope it stays that way because I don't know what the situation is like in the UK, but here in Belgium and the Netherlands, infections are on the rise again. So I keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah, we're suffering from a bit of that, and I think the west of Scotland, Glasgow in particular, seems to be back up again. You know.
But we've got quite a couple of great events planned for you. So if you want to join us, you're very welcome, and you can look up which events we have got planned on both the smws.eu website and on our Facebook page, of course, where we are quite active announcing this kind of stuff. And we have got some great stuff planned. Obviously, the tasting with you in Utrecht at the Malt Vault. The 28th of November, we're going to do a vertical tasting at JD Williams in Amsterdam. So we have picked out one of our flavor profiles, and we're going to put 6 bottles of the same flavor profile next to each other to try and see if there is sort of logic to the matter.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That'd be very, very interesting. When is that, Bob?
The 28th of November. That is.
Okay.
In Amsterdam at JD Williams, which is one of our partner bars. The 12th whiskey dinner at the Englenburg, obviously, and the 17th will be in Zwolle again with the old and rare tasting. And this is actually the old and rare tasting which we should have had last year. So I kept the bottles.
So it's older, tasting.
It's not older technically, but it's become rarer.
Yeah.
Most definitely, absolutely, yeah. And obviously the festival. So again, Bray and The Hague.
I'm looking forward to meeting lots and lots of the members in the Netherlands. I already know quite a few that have actually been on here. But I'm looking forward to meeting lots of you. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and mind you, if you don't have any tickets for the Hague Festival, and it is sold out, so they're hard to come by. Meanwhile, the tastings Jonah is doing are actually open for people who don't have festival tickets as well. So you can buy tasting tickets separately for the festival tasting John is doing in The Hague on the 19th, 20th, and the 21st. Before we round up, we want to thank you. Yeah, obviously. Obviously. Guys, it has been an honor to meet you up here on the internet again and to share these great whiskeys with you. And Well, thank you very much, John, for joining us.
My
Although,
pleasure. Just a wee toast, Bob.
yeah,
Love makes the world go round, but whiskey makes it go round a little faster. Slanjua.
Slanja. I'll gladly drink to that.
Cheers.